All right, let's open in the word of prayer. Our Heavenly Father, thank you so much for your word. Thank you so much for the time that you give us. And I pray that we will redeem this time that you've given us this evening. Thank you for each one that's here. I pray that you will edify and build up and help each other be encouraged and be excited about the time we're living in, Lord. And we pray in Jesus' name, amen. Okay, well, like every time, start out with a little bit of news. So I got all of this news this morning relative to today. This is the Israeli I-24 news. The new COVID variant, it's called BA286, but they've named it Eris, and the Greek, that's a Greek goddess. Why they would do that is beyond me. The Greek goddess of strife and discord. What?
You can't make this
Where
stuff
do they
up.
come up with this stuff? Well, the new variant is in the U.S., the U.K., and Israel, as well as Europe. And Ireland is getting hit real hard. And they're calling for the use of masks again, and that will be in the mid-September. And TSA will wear them first, airplanes, and then government workers. This is straight from Biden, so this is
That stuff that's coming down the pipe is in the U.S.
yes.
It's here.
Yep. And then from the Gateway Pundit, that is another online magazine, and they said again the masks are coming. So this is two magazines that had the same, basically the same news. And then from
Because
the
that's a stronger variant or something? Or?
yeah, it's a really, really scary one. This one we could all die with. But the mask will help. The People's Voice is another online magazine. 14, now this is not made up, this is real. 14 U.S. cities have already signed a treaty with the WEF, World Economic Forum, to ban meat, dairy, and private cars by 2030. In addition, you can only buy 3 new clothing items per year, 1 short-haul return flight, which is less than 932 miles, every 3 years per person. This is all coming from the WEF to save the planet. Now, when you read that and you hear that, and you think, it'll never happen. Well, it may not happen exactly like that, but to ease the pain, they may say, okay, you can buy 6 new pairs of pants or whatever. So they'll give you something. But this is like Jay and I were some of us were talking earlier. You got to look at this stuff as totally, it is insane, but they've been turned over. Their minds have been turned over. They have a reprobate mind. That's Romans 1. We are under judgment, and it's the world. It's the whole world. You got to look at this stuff. It's crazy and insane, but you got to look at it from a biblical worldview, not logic. Logic doesn't work.
What cities of those?
Okay, that's my next little paragraph. Austin, Boston, Chicago, Houston, Los Angeles, Miami, New Orleans, New York City, Philadelphia, Phoenix, and don't think we're out of it, Portland, San Francisco, Washington DC, and Seattle. Those people have already signed this treaty.
I believe,
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
not based off of where we're at, like what's going on around the world,
Yeah.
it doesn't surprise me to see usually don't.
And then I didn't write it down, but Rob brought it up last meeting. He asked at the end of the meeting, did anybody hear of this bill that's being proposed in Oregon? And I got a text while he was explaining it from another friend of mine with that bill, explaining what it is. And it's no more animals because of inhumanity, no more gardens, no more raising farm animals is basically livestock. Yeah, because of cruelty, and it goes on and on. It's just insane. And all they need is 120,000 signatures to get it on the ballot, and it'll be for the 2024 election. And I was talking to somebody else, if it gets on the ballot, it's gonna pass, because Portland and Eugene will pass it. And it's, we sit here and laugh, but remember laughing about some stuff about 10 years ago, and that'll never happen. And here we are promoting drag queens and,
Dude, we got Biden as president,
yeah,
that's no different.
yeah,
I mean, who would've thought Joe Biden would end up being president
Yeah.
after, you saw what you saw.
exactly.
I mean, it's like, we know that he was not gonna be a competent president.
Yeah. Yep.
People still voted for him. I don't necessarily think they voted for Biden, I think they voted against Trump.
Yeah. Okay, the last thing today is, so you remember BRICS, right? Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. That's the, what's today, the 21st? They meet tomorrow to do their new petrodollar, to kill the American dollar. Well, and to induct 5 more countries. Brazil today had their CBDC, which is Central Bank Digital Currency. They went live with their new digital currency today.
Oh,
And that's called DREX, D-R-E-X. Digital real, and real is their money. So, like ours is called a dollar, theirs is called a real. So it's digital, real, electronic, X, and I don't know what the X means, but, ours is called Fed Now. And so ours is out, but they're, just experimenting with it now. So, there's the news for today. It's exciting. All right, we didn't quite finish Revelation chapter 11. So, we're like verse 14. But before we do that, chapter 12 is God's redemptive plan through a woman and a child. So you remember, we've seen the woman and the child talked about here in the first part of chapter 11, right? And we're going to see that in chapter 12, where a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed in the sun. You know what that's talking about? Stars, right? It's a constellation. The woman, and when she has the child, a planet, and I believe it's Venus, don't quote me on that, but it goes through that constellation and looks like a woman having a child. So it's all in constellations. So remember in Genesis chapter 1, verse 14, why God created the sun, the moon, and the stars, and he gave a list. The first thing on the list was for signs. Not white, but signs. And this chapter 12 then is talking about some of those signs. Then chapter 13 is the opposition to that plan by the dragon. And the beast out of the sea and the beast out of the earth. So we're going to get into that. And then chapter 14 is the proclamation of that plan by the three angels. So it's important when we look at Revelation to see the big picture instead of the little pictures. Because the little snippets we get are confusing. But if we see what the plan is, then it's easy to understand. And if you look at Revelation chapter 1, which is a good thing to remind ourselves with what Revelation is about, he says in 1:1, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants, things which must shortly take place, and he sent and signified it by his angel to his servant John. So the Revelation, the book, is all about Jesus. And Jesus is all about the gospel message. So the gospel message is through Revelation. And so chapter 14 is those angels are proclaiming that message, flying around the earth saying, don't take the mark of the beast. Alright, so remember in what was it, chapter 9 maybe, the angels said woe, woe, woe. Okay, so we've had one woe. Chapter 11 verse 14, the second woe is past. So now we're into what's the third woe. Behold, the third woe is coming quickly. Verse 15, then the seventh angel sounded, and there were loud voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of the Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. And the 24 elders who sat before the God on their thrones fell on their faces and worshiped God, saying, we give you thanks, O Lord God Almighty, the one who is, and who was, and who is to come, because you have taken your great power and reigned. The nations were angry, and your wrath has come, then the time of the dead, that they should be judged, and that you should reward your servants the prophets, and the saints, and those who fear your name, small and great, and should destroy those who destroy the earth. What's that sound like? That's the end of the tribulation, right? Isn't that the only time that verse 15, the seventh angel sounded, and there were loud voices saying, the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of God. Right? So that's not in the tribulation, right? The kingdoms of the world are still Satan's. So now, all of a sudden, in the middle of Revelation, we're at the end of the tribulation. But not for long. We're going to go back into the tribulation right after this. But that's how the book of Revelation can be confusing if you're looking at the micro, the pieces of it. You have to almost keep yourself standing back, looking at it from afar, the big picture, because otherwise it's just confusing. And the seventh trumpet is the end of the tribulation. So he's actually giving us a hope here and encouragement, knowing that Jesus is, okay, here's another data point or a snippet. The Lord's Prayer, when we pray, thy kingdom come, this is it. Thy kingdom come. He means he just took the kingdoms away from the nations, and now Jesus is reigning. So that's the hope that we're praying for. We pray the Lord's Prayer every day, or we're to pray like this, he said. Well, that's praying for this kingdom. Which, to me, when I figured that out, made that whole Lord's Prayer, oh man, that's made it exciting and more relevant to me. But it's all been for 2,000 years. People have been praying for thy kingdom to come. Uh-oh, okay, lost my place. So the 24 elders, up in verse 16, what do we equate those 24 elders as? All the way back to the beginning of the book of Revelation, what did
Is that the 12 disciples?
the 24 elders?
Right, 12.
So we could equate those 24 elders as the raptured church. Which is another pre-tribulation rapture, argument. I think it's a little bit weak because we don't know who these 24 elders are, but that's what the scholars all say. I wouldn't argue with anybody over it, but the 24 elders are mentioned 3 times, okay? So chapter 4, and if you remember the first verse in chapter 4, which is also one of my favorite pre-tribulation rapture verses, John heard a voice like a trumpet saying, come up here. So then in chapter 4, and 4 and 5 is all about the heaven. So John is in heaven and looking down at the tribulation. Another argument for the pre-tribulation rapture. And the 24 elders are mentioned here in chapter 4. That's the first time they're mentioned. Then chapter 5, they're praising God as Redeemer. In chapter 4, they're praising God as Creator. Chapter 5, they're praising God as Redeemer. Chapter 11, here, what we just read, they are praising God as Judge and King. So, then, for the rest of the book, we don't see the 24 elders. Not that they're gone. They're just not mentioned. Okay, so then in verse 19, then the temple of God was opened in heaven, and the ark of his covenant was seen in his temple. And there were lightnings, noises, thunderings, an earthquake, and great hail. Some people believe that is why the Ark of the Covenant is not here. It's in heaven. What? I'm not buying that either. Because that temple is not, that temple was there when Solomon built the first temple. So,
They built the ark in the first place.
Yeah. So I'm not buying that one either.
It supposedly is a representation of heavenly things, right, the tabernacle?
That was the
Yeah,
first
say that
temple
again.
was,
Right.
yeah. So why wouldn't the ark be there and an ark down here, but, people that are smarter than me,
I think God spare us from that. If the only reason, if the ark was here, people would worship that instead of this.
oh, yeah, totally, yeah. That is already, look at the wall, and it's just a rock
It's just a
wall. They're worshiping, you know, and a lot of people, not everybody, but
Which wall?
the
Really,
wailing
really
wall. You know, it's just, people will, well, that's why
Worship.
Moses' body, you know, was,
She gets
Left.
too.
yeah,
He carried the bronze serpent around with him for what, 800 years? I forget which king said, throw that thing away, it's just a piece of brass. Stop.
yeah. Do you remember the, Jesus' ascension? And Peter and John and James were there, and, Moses and Elijah came down, and they said, the first thing they said, oh, let's build, tabernacles right here. We can worship right here. It's like, oh, don't do that. So, it's the same thing, you know, same deal. Do you have any thoughts on chapter 11 before we go to 12?
If you tie that in chapter with Psalm 2, why did the kings of the earth devise in vain?
Yeah,
God's got it all under control.
Oh,
so he
yeah.
can do whatever he wanted to.
that's funny. I read that this morning, Psalm 2, and God just laughs.
Yeah, it's God laughs.
It's like, yeah, if you ever want to have a good psalm to read, thinking about man on earth, thinking how clever and smart they are, and whoa, look at the laws I just read, what they're trying to bring on. That's Psalm 2.
Yes.
It's just foolishness. But God's letting them do this. You know, that He's given permission for this to happen. All right, so chapter 12. Now a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon. Actually, we could look at Genesis 37, just to show you that I'm not full of beans. And I'm not sure what verses. But this is Jacob. So in verse 5, Joseph dreamed a dream. Alright? And down in 9, then he dreamed still another dream and told it to his brothers, look, I have dreamed another dream, and this time the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowed down to me. So it's this type of constellation that now John's seeing in chapter 13. And it's all about Israel. So keep that in mind when we read chapter 13. It's all about Israel. But that's also back to the point of what's the tribulation called, remember, in Isaiah? Or Ezekiel?
Jacob's trouble?
Yeah, the time of Jacob's trouble. That's Israel. So his goal is to bring the remnant of Israel to him, to himself, not the Gentiles. Which is another reason why we're not here. Now there's millions of people going to get saved, but that's only because of God's grace and mercy. That's another thing that we really need to look at as we read Revelation, is the amazing amount of patience and grace and mercy, long suffering God has towards humans, and we're the dumbest bunch of people. We're
You call
dumber
it
than.
sheep for nothing.
Oh, yeah, it's horrible. I mean, just look at what I read this a little bit ago, how stupid it is, but God's so patient and so full of mercy and grace, all through Revelation, He's giving opportunity to be saved. And it's another reason why we can't preach the gospel without preaching the third part of salvation, which is the glorification. The end times. Revelation is the final part of the gospel message. And that's God's redemptive plan through Israel and Jesus. So this chapter is out of order chronologically, because we've gone through the 7 seals and the 7 trumpets now, and now we're going back. So let's see. A woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. Then, being with child, she cried out in labor and in pain to give birth. And another sign appeared in heaven: behold, a great and fiery red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 diadems on its heads. What was when was this first vision, the woman giving birth? Got any ideas?
Yeah, Genesis 37, we just read.
Yeah. Yep. So this was a long time ago, right? He's just kind of giving us an idea of his plan through the ages. You know who the child is? Who?
It's Christ.
Yeah. So, Jesus. So, and the woman is Israel. And that was Genesis 37, Joseph's dream. So, Genesis and Revelation, it's beginning and the end. Just another thing that's amazing to me. So the 12 stars, we know, are the 12 nations of Israel. Then this great fiery red dragon, who's that? Yeah, Satan. And the diadems and heads and horns and all that signify power, and who's the Lord of this world? Huh?
See?
Yeah. See? So he drug what it says, his tail drew a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. So that's the angels that followed him. So you can see how it can confuse us in Revelation if you don't back up and see the big picture. If you just think, okay, we're in the tribulation, well, what's this woman and this dragon? And I thought it's already happened. It's been 6,000 years ago now. 4,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago, at least for the dragon. But Israel was 3,500 or 4,000 years ago, whatever. Okay, so if I miss something, speak up, because verse 5, she bore a male child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. When is that child going to rule all nations with a rod of iron? Huh?
Millennium.
Yeah. So it hasn't, that part of this vision hasn't happened yet. You can see how it's not confusing, but it can be confusing if we don't know 2 Timothy 3:16. And that's study, to show yourself approved unto God, right? So we can't know this stuff unless we know this, which is amazing to me, and why we're all here. I mean, why we're doing this is to help us learn. So, but it makes it exciting to me. It's fun. There's nothing about this book that's boring. It's just amazing. Okay, okay, so now verse 6, then the woman fled into the wilderness where she has a place prepared by God. Now, where are we? What happened all of a sudden?
Back at the midpoint of the tribulation.
Okay, what makes the woman, Israel, flee into the wilderness? Do you
Each
know?
treaty gets broken, right?
Yeah. The treaty gets broken by, remember, the temple is built now, and the daily sacrifices have been going because of this treaty that the Antichrist set up about 4 or 5 chapters ago, and Israel thinks that they're all dwelling in peace and safety, and all of a sudden, the woman, Israel, has to flee into the wilderness. And God himself takes her there. He protects a third of the Israel. So those people that flee into the wilderness, only 1/3, they're the ones that are going to populate the millennium. These people are safe because God himself is protecting them. Satan is going to do everything he can. In fact, he tries to make the earth itself attack them. And God uses the earth to thwart that attack. So, no, Satan thinks he's tough, but okay, so, in fact, verse 6, the last half, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. That's 3.5 years. That's the last half of the tribulation. Because the first half of the tribulation, they were relatively secure in Israel. Then verse 7, and war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought, but they did not prevail, nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Then I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brethren, who accused them before our God day and night, has been cast down. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they did not love their lives to the death. Thoughts? tribulation at the beginning of the chapter,
Yeah.
back to the tribulation, and back out of the tribulation. So the Satan has been cast out of heaven with his angels. That's the red dragon, and that was before even creation. Well, Satan was cast out, but he has been given access since, so that he can be the accuser of the brethren. So he can go before God. So let's see, remember Job. So Job, Satan asked for permission. Who else? Satan asked for Judas, and he indwelt Judas. Satan asked for Peter. Remember? At the in Luke 21, Jesus at the Last Supper, Jesus says to Peter, Peter, Satan has asked for you, and he's asked to sift you, but I've prayed for you so that you won't be tempted or fail in temptation. So Satan goes before God still today, accusing Rob and me and who, of whatever, and asking for permission to let me test him. But there comes a time here in the middle of the tribulation where that's done. And actually, I think it's even before the middle of the tribulation. I think it's towards the first. But Satan knows he has very little time. And say that again.
It's in here.
Right. Oh, it's in 12. Oh, 13. Oh, 12. 12:12. For the devil has come down to you having great wrath because he knows that he has a short time. So, remember when Jesus went to the demoniacs, those two guys with the 2,000 or 3,000 demons in them? And the demon, now I may get this wrong, but Jesus came to somebody that had demons, I think it was them, and he said, the demon said, what are you doing, Jesus? Are you come to torture us before our time? So they know the time. They know there's an appointed time for all this to end. And Satan is their ruler, so he knows better than they.
So there's the wrath of God, and we're not appointed to wrath. But there's also the wrath of the devil, which is what you're talking about, basically. Are we supposed to endure that?
Yeah. In fact, I've got a sheet of paper here about persecution, and that's coming. So the tribulation has two wraths in it, besides Satan. I don't count him. But the first half is the wrath of the Lamb. That's Jesus. The second half is the wrath of God. And that's when he comes in, God himself delivers the woman to a safe place for 3.5 years. But all through the New Testament, Jesus and Paul and all their teachings said, you're going to be persecuted. And it's the wrath of man, or what you're calling the wrath of Satan, which is the same thing. We are either ruled by God or Satan. And so Satan's wrath is on anybody that is made in the image of God, because of his being cast out. So, yeah, mankind has been enduring this since Adam and Eve. That's why Satan was able to get to Eve and Adam. So. And it began there.
Well, Jesus said, you think I've come to bring peace on earth? He says, no. We're at war, basically.
Mm-hmm.
The line's already been drawn. If you've accepted Christ in your heart,
Yep.
then you're an enemy of this guy, and
Yeah.
he's going to make life tough for you
Yep.
every which way he can.
And that's Ephesians 6. Our war is not with flesh and blood, but it's with principalities and powers, and it's evil. Yep. Yep, exactly right. That's a good point. But the wrath that we're not appointed to is the wrath of God. Yeah. That wrath that we were appointed to, God's wrath, but Jesus took that on at the cross. That wrath was paid. And that's why we're exempt, which is a glorious thing to know. And Jesus says, don't worry about the guy, or I think it's Paul, don't worry about the one that can kill your body. Worry about the one that can kill your soul. So, we may pay a little, but we have eternity, and that's why we're to know the end times, because we have hope. Titus 2:13. Our blessed hope is his return, or our being with him, one way or the other. So, yeah, we don't have to fear. There's no reason to fear.
That word hope is a noun. It's not something we're doing, it's something we have.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Not like, gee, I hope everything works out. We have the hope that
yeah, good point.
everything's gonna work out.
Good point. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Peter basically said for me to die is to gain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paul.
Paul was, I've got very,
They run together for me too.
Yeah.
I'm very great faith.
Yeah, but, yeah, that's a good point. We win
Yeah,
whether we go in the rapture or not.
yeah.
It's just a matter of convenience. And,
Interesting way to put that.
Yeah, big convenience.
Convenience.
well, I believe with all my heart that Luke 21, 34, I think it is, or 35, is this generation will not pass away that sees all these things. And then 1 Corinthians 15:51, Paul says, well, we're not all going to sleep.
Yeah.
So Paul said it clear back 2,000 years ago. There's people coming that are not going to die.
Right.
So
I've had that argument with a lot of people, thinking that, everybody has to die. No, not everybody's going to die.
exactly, yep, that's in the Bible.
Yep. But they want to say everybody has to die.
Yeah.
No.
Now, for
Well, the reality,
6,000 years, everybody's died except for a couple.
the reality is, I might have young daughters, very inquisitive, we just went to a funeral, and the reality is, actually, no one ever dies.
That's right.
It's just
We
one
change state.
Yeah, either heaven or hell, no one actually dies.
Yeah,
We end this life, scary and confusing, but I teach my daughters that, I'm like, you realize, like, pick the worst death you could think of. God's given so many chemicals to us, like if you were to die with being your head cut off, that's probably the fastest, simplest, easiest way to
Oh,
do
yeah.
that. You don't feel anything. There would be no pain. If you've ever cut yourself, most of the time we start bleeding before we realize it's wet, and then we don't experience pain until later on, right? So that, like, I teach my daughters, like, we don't actually die. The only thing that hurts is the ones that are left behind dealing with the body or dealing with
Yeah.
change. And what's even worse is we have hope when we do die. We don't die, we just literally transfer on to the unlimited realm of eternity, right? So does everyone else. And the ones that are really worried about that, they don't know what the next, or maybe they do know and they want to still maximize and hold out on that here. So it's a fun one. So you realize none of us ever die? What do you mean we die? On this earth we might, but if we're eternal beings,
The flesh dies, but the spirit.
we're having an earthly experience, which is weird for all of us. Jesus thought it was cumbersome, being in the flesh.
But Adam and Eve were immortal. Were, before they, sinned and ate of the tree of knowledge. That's when death entered into their mortal bodies. They didn't
Yeah.
really understand death at first. Have you ever read the book of Enoch? It talks, their perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting, that book of Enoch. Yeah. One thing we probably need to, like when you're teaching your girls or anybody, when we talk to anybody, we need to be encouraging people with that, blessed hope, what our blessed hope is. Because without that, by default, we're gonna have hope in the world. We have to have hope in something. We're going to have hope in something. So if we don't have hope in God, in the promises that He's given us, then our hope sucks, because it's gonna be in the world. And you were saying earlier, there's half of the church people, I hesitate to say Christians, but half of the church people that are, when this stuff goes down, goes sideways, that's what I worry the most, or am concerned the most about, is where they have their hope. They trust in what, the pastor that they listen to, or, their retirement funds, or, whatever. But all that stuff's gonna be gone. What happens when that stuff's gone? And the pastor's, he's lit out, too, yeah, I didn't sign up for this stuff, or whatever, but it shouldn't shock us. We should say, oh, yeah, well, we're there, well, not long.
Your pastor's still here and you're still here, you can fire him.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I think we're gonna actually get through 12. Nah, maybe not. Where are we?
13.
Huh?
Verse 13.
Which one?
12, 13.
Oh, okay. Now, when the dragon saw that he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child. But the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness to her place, where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time, which is 3.5 years, from the presence of the serpent. So the serpent spewed water out of his mouth like a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away by a flood. But the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon had spewed out of his mouth. And the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went to make war with the rest of her offspring, who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Who's that?
It's an army coming against Israel, right?
Huh?
It's an army coming against Israel, right? That God
Yeah.
destroys.
And believers, whatever believers are on the earth. So God, now I've read and seen things, the 2 wings that was given to the Israel. Yeah, it's America and it's the wings like an eagle, and it's like, America is sucking pond water right now, and they wouldn't help Israel do anything even today. So we know that was from years ago when America was actually loved Israel, great, but yeah. So this is strictly from God. This God's protection of this remnant. So Satan knows he's only got a short while, 3.5 years, well, probably somewhere around 3 years now in this time frame. So, all I know is we don't want to be here. That's chapter 12, unless you got something else add in there. I do want to say sometime, which we're out of our hour, but you were saying about what's coming. I'll just read one verse, and it's in Revelation 3:10. And he says, because you have kept my command to persevere. Okay, this is Jesus himself, and it's to a church, but keep in mind this is to us as well, as a church, as the church. Because you have kept my command to persevere, which means there's something to persevere for, I also will keep you from the hour of trial, which shall come upon the whole world to test those who dwell on the earth. Behold, I come quickly. Hold fast to what you have, that no one may take your crown. You know what crown he's talking about? No, yeah, it's the crown of life, which is the crown you get for longing for and loving for his return. Yeah, there's I think that's in it's either 2 Thessalonians or Timothy, and it's the crown of life. Don't let anybody take it, it says. But there is something to persevere about coming. And keep in mind, we're insulated and isolated here. I get the voice of the martyrs, and there's just millions of people today. Today, they say, there's 360 million people being persecuted to almost death. They have nothing. They're starving. They've had everything taken from them, and most of these people are in Africa, and where it's just famine and horrible wars. They know persecution, and these verses are for them, and we're to pray for them daily. So as we pray for them, we realize we could have a taste of that, and then we're not surprised. We're not shocked when somebody picks on us because we gave a testimony or tried to witness to someone or whatever. But
We're seeing India and Pakistan both, or other countries that are very bad right now.
oh yeah, Yeah, I heard something, oh, yes, today, Pakistan had 21 churches burned to the ground. Over 10,000 people have been displaced.
India's going through the same thing.
Yeah. Yep. So, and it's, the other religions are trying to kill them, and it's genocide, so. Yeah, we have it pretty well isolated here, but the rest of the world does not. Let me, close in prayer and we can do whatever at this point. Heavenly Father, thank you for your word, thank you for the Spirit that teaches us and leads us and guides us and help us to be careful to what we hear and what we say, and I pray that we will be faithful, that we will be like Jesus and be long-suffering and patient and kind and forgiving, and I pray that we will be examples that bring people to see you and not us, and that we will be ambassadors that you are proud of and you say, well done. And I pray that you will give safety as we drive to our homes, and I pray in Jesus' name, amen. I'll shut the old recorder thingy off here.